Hello everyone, this is RaySpace here with more interplanetary ship design in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Realism Overhaul and Real Solar System. In this video I'm going to provide a catalog of the futuristic ships that I am planning on using in the timeline between 2030 and 2100. So we're talking about that span of time. These are the ships that are going to be active, and these are going to be the simple sized ships. They're not going to be the largest size or the more complex designs. The goal with these ships is that they are launchable with current launchers in about 4 launches. I think they should be launchable. Well, I'm baselining for SLS, even though that's controversial or whatever now. But we'll also say that for a starship with a sufficiently large cargo area or volume, they would fit in there too. But we'll set that aside for now. The point is that overall, we're going with 4 launches, about 100 tons apiece, so 400 tons. And the payload, I'm going to keep consistent so that we can compare each of these. So the payload is going to be a 60-ton payload. Let's just see, 65 tons, okay? So 65-ton payload on the front, and then we are going to go through a total of 9 designs, so you can see how they look. And the first one is the one that is most immediately doable, which is a NTP one. I mean, of course, it'd be even more doable if we just left off the NTP, but that's no fun. But there's a xenon ion engine plus nuclear thermal propulsion engine. This is the NASA NTP architecture for 2019. It is 111 kilonewtons, 875 seconds of ISP, so nothing too fancy, but not something that we actually have. It's just something that's doable. And then the ion engines are based on the X3 ion engines that are a thing, and each one has a set of 10. And overall, it is the xenon tank with a little bit of hydrogen in the middle for the NTP, and then otherwise these are nuclear thermal tanks for the hydrogen. So there's hydrogen there with MLI layers, and actually probably what we've got around it is sort of a micrometeorite shield. And then I made it like this because this is how it looked like in the NASA plan. And then the RCS thrusters with hypergolic propellants. And so what we see here is that we have 11,000 meters per second, 4,604 with the NTP. That takes 3 hours, by the way. And then 6,409 in 12 days with the ion engines. And this is meant to go to Mars, and it'll be sort of assembled. Ideally, it'll transfer to high orbit in some way and then boost out. So it won't boost out from a low orbit, otherwise it would take too much of the NTP fuel. But in any case, it can get to Mars with the 65 tons of payload that we have on the front, and more development can be done, but this is the baseline model. Okay, so yeah, that is ship number 1, the nuclear ion ship version 1. This is the nuclear ion ship version 2. The 400 tons, by the way, is not including the payload, so that's why, whoops. Anyway, the payload is 65 tons. I guess I can take it off from here. That's about 405 tons like that. Okay, so what we see is that we get less out of the nuclear thermal engine, which is still a NASA NTP architecture 2019. Just 3,000 from that. And then 17,186 in 14 days with 6 sets now. So we obviously need more nuclear power for that. So we are using the molten salt reactor from KSP Interstellar instead of the ones that were built into the module I had created. We see my large RCS module with the core there. That's a procedural tank with the xenon gas, and otherwise still the same hydrogen tanks up there. And that is that ship. So it's just a little bit bigger, more ion engines, more ion engine delta V, and more delta V overall then. So it could get a heavier payload to Mars, or it can get to Mars a bit faster. Or Venus, you know. So those basically cover us until about 2050. And this one is 2054, and this is VASIMR with a larger nuclear engine. This is now a Timberwind Pebblebed reactor nuclear engine with 441 kilonewtons, 980 seconds of ISP, so a bit more performance. Lots of VASIMR, upscaled VASIMRs, and these take a lot of power, but actually the KSP interstellar reactors are good enough for that. We're not relying on the reactor in this for powering the ion engines or the VASIMRs, by the way. You can see 400 tons altogether, so the back end is about 335, 338-ish. And now we have drop tanks, hydrogen drop tanks. So we get rid of the hydrogen. We'll use the NTP first, 5,385, and then use the hydrogen in the, well, in this case, argon gas in the back, 16,349. But it takes 116 days. So we're probably not going to Mars with this. This is going further out, maybe to Ceres or Vesta, maybe to Jupiter. But in 116 days, there's just no point using the VASIMRs like that. It's sad that they're so weak, but they are. They do get 4,900 seconds of ISP, which is better than the X3 ion thrusters. So there is that. So that is this assembly. Again, same payload. So we went from using xenon as our ion engine fuel, which has the most thrust, to argon with the VASIMR, which has less thrust, more ISP. And now this is the version that has the most ISP, least thrust, and that's the hydrogen configuration. Unfortunately, it actually overdoes the thrust, I feel like, when it comes to KSP Interstellar. KSP Interstellar is too kind to hydrogen. Hydrogen gets 22,680 seconds of ISP with KSP Interstellar. So that's good. And theoretically, that is something that could be done, but yeah, it shouldn't be getting much thrust. But here we see 13 days if the ion engines used all of the fuel here. It's all hydrogen now. And then they would get 156,841, which sounds pretty darn good. But we still have an NTP here, and it's again the Timberwind. So the way it goes is that the Timberwind will use these 3 tanks, and then only the rear tanks, these bits, are used by the ion engines. So what we end up getting is 4,712 with the NTR, and then 46,518 with the ions. So there's a big upgrade. This is more like the 2060s in the timeline. The previous one, Argon VASIMR, is 2050s. There'll be different organizations using different ones. Probably one organization's going to be doing the ions, and another one's going to be doing the VASIMR. I think that's how I have it in the timeline. So yeah, there'll be some competition. But this, therefore, in reality gets in total about 50,000 meters per second of delta V. The back end, the power portion, is 362 tons. And once we get rid of these 3 tanks, we'll see that the burn time is about 3 days, which is why I say seems like KSP Interstellar is being too kind to the hydrogen ones. Maybe I'll do a special hydrogen configuration or something. Now we're back with the VASIMR, but now the VASIMR is able to use the hydrogen. So these are hydrogen VASIMRs, 800 kilowatts apiece, and we have 6 of them, 6 sets, 12 nozzles. And we have the Timberwind again. And otherwise, the drop tanks again, very similar, familiar sort of setup. And if we just used all the fuel with the nuclear engine, we get 8,000, or if we just used the VASIMRs, we get 104,000, which is not as good, right? And that's because I configured these VASIMRs, and I only gave it 12,710 seconds of ISP, just to be conservative. And they don't get much thrust either, as you can see, 2 years with all the tanks. But we're not going to use all the tanks with the VASIMRs. We're going to use the 3 drop tanks with the nuclear engine, and that will provide us with 5,812 meters per second, and then the VASIMRs will get another 28,744. So that is somewhat inferior to the previous ion engine one, And so the VASIMR team is going to be in a bit of a pickle. And also, just using the VASIMRs with the rear tank, that still takes 151 days. So not great, but maybe I'll nerf the ion engines a little bit to even it out somewhat. But it does seem like they get a better deal on the hydrogen right now. But don't worry, the VASIMR team will have a comeback, and that comeback will be driven by the nuclear light bulb, the closed cycle gas core engine. So closed cycle gas core engine, it alone gets 3,500 seconds of ISP, so much better than your normal nuclear, even with the pebble bed. And then we have the larger hydrogen VASIMRs. These are 2,400 kilowatt. And so we have 4 of the KSP interstellar reactors tucked in there. And then we need actual huge radiators. So we have a radiator truss for the first time instead of just the small radiators. And that's providing enough for the nuclear light bulb. The nuclear light bulb is what needs it. So does the KSP interstellar kind of heating. And the nuclear light bulb needs a lot of radiator capacity. Otherwise, what we have is, once again, a lot of hydrogen, not the drop tanks this time. I don't know why I didn't put the drop tanks, but it's all hydrogen. And all together, we can, and this is not shared. So, I mean, this is shared. This is not a little bit for the light bulb and then the back tank for the VASIMRs. This is like, we can use either one at any time. And what we get is 18,737 with the light bulb, or we can get 67,320 with the VASIMRs, but that'll take 298 days. So that is the trade-off, and overall the business end of this is 351 tons. So that's the next step up. That gives a little bit more delta V, and then the light bulb, of course, gives a lot more flexibility. 18,000 meters per second is pretty good at that kind of burn time, 9 hours. Still, we need some sort of persistent thrust during time warp, Pekka's warp thrust. So, that is important. Our next step up from that is a fission fragment ship. And I don't know if this is the best thing to go to next, but it seemed like the next step up in ISP. And for the first time, we don't have any ion or VASIMR. It's just a straight up fission engine. And it's an Asimov afterburning fission fragment rocket engine from far future. And it gets 32,000 seconds of ISP, just 30 kilonewtons though, so we still have a 3-day, 13-hour burn time. And it doesn't... it gets close to, I guess it does get a little bit more than the previous one, but the next fission fragment ship will really beat the previous one out. Where this really excels is the fact that it doesn't actually take much mass. These tanks are large, but they're not that heavy. They've got fissionable particles, probably mostly shielding. So yeah, the total business end of this is 85 tons only, or sorry, 80 tons. And we get 70,000 meters per second out of it. But I realized that that really wasn't that large. I mean, it was only 145 tons, so we could easily go larger, and so this is the larger version. This is 254 tons altogether, which means about 190 tons as the business end with the radiators. Now we have heat management stuff, but we are removing more than enough. And we have larger tanks, but not too large. They're about 12 meters in diameter, which, if you recall, I was thinking of making a 12-meter diameter starship, so it'll be all right. and then we will have the same engine in the back. So that gets us 154,000 meters per second, definitely better than anything else we've seen, and that in 11 days, or 12 days, just about. And that would be about 2077 in the timeline. So next step up, and the last one to be introduced in this video, is the direct fusion ship. For reasons I might reconsider, I decided to go with these hydrogen tanks again, though we're going with surface-mounted solar panels. And I've paired them up sort of permanently, so there's no docking port between this one and that one. That makes it easier to put them together and use these radiators. Those radiators being necessary because this is a far future engine. And this is a spherical tokamak fusion engine, which there was nothing specifically called direct fusion engine. So I assume this was direct enough. And it gets 17,900 seconds of ISP, which is less than our previous ship with the fission particles. And overall it is heavier, but because it's heavier, it is getting a decent amount of delta V. So of course we could have made the previous one, the fission fragment one, even heavier and get even more delta V, but this will be the format for now. And what this has is the hydrogen, and then it also has liquid helium and deuterium here for the fusion, and it basically does fusion and then sends the hydrogen through in order to get the thrust. And we got 124,000 in 3 days, 3 hours. And so this would be about 2088 or something like that. Will be when it's active, and then we'll see how long it lasts. So this is the initial lineup. Those will be the ships that are active through to 2100, and then there'll be the antimatter initiated fusion engine right at the end. But we'll get to that. I mean, I've used that before. But now these are much smaller ships than the ones I've been testing. The ones I've been testing are more optimally delta V'd ships. They are the ones that take the ISP and then multiply by 10 to get the right amount of delta V, so it'd be 179,000. But those end up being much larger. And those were also carrying more than twice this payload. Those were carrying about 170 tons. So those tended to be in the 2,000 ton range altogether for the ship. But that's hard to construct. These are the easier to construct ones, but those will exist as well. These are sort of the cuter ships that are easier to manage. And those other ones will probably take larger launchers. These that we can do with something that can carry 100 tons without doing too much assembly. So that is the idea. That is the lineup of futuristic ships that I have right now for the TPAA timeline. And we'll be working with this. People have been asking me to do solar system tourism again. So basically these will be the kinds of things that will show up in solar system tourism. Depending on the date, we'll get which ships we get, right, as we go along. So that is the idea. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.